Hey guys, great to see you all again. I just want to get right into things because I've been meaning to do this video for a while now, and it was just recently announced that this game would be coming to Nintendo Switch, Steam, and Xbox One later this summer, so the timing couldn't have been more perfect on my part. Now I've got a lot of other stuff to work on that I'm sure you're probably tired of me mentioning here, so let's push all that aside and start 2018 off with a Crash. You get it? Because his name is Crash and... Just roll the new intro. Now, I've already covered the original Crash Bandicoot Trilogy on PS1, so I'll probably put a card in the upper right corner to take you to the first review, and then you can go on from there. But, for now though, I'll just say that I adore these games, mostly the third one, and absolutely could not wait to get my hands on this new remastered collection. I even bought a PlayStation 4 just for this game, though that probably doesn't matter now since it's going multi-platform, but whatever. Crash Bandicoot was a series close to a lot of people's hearts, myself included, so if Sony was going to bring him back, they had to do it right, especially considering all the ups and downs that Crash had faced during his career. After Naughty Dog left Crash behind to work exclusively with Sony, Crash was handed off to a slew of third-party developers, and some of the games we got as a result of this weren't actually that bad, like the first two Game Boy Advance titles. Then there were games like Wrath of Cortex, which got the formula right most of the time and was really fun in places, but also pretty inconsistent in terms of the quality of its level design and gimmicks. Then there was Crash Twinsanity.
Where are you, big brother? There's something weird going on in the bay!
I hate Crash Twinsanity. Then Crash of the Titans and Crash Mind Over Mutant came along, and while some thought those games were pretty decent despite the drastic changes made to the series, others just couldn't get behind them. Meanwhile, I have next to no experience with either of them, and maybe that's for the better. Then, after the release of Mind Over Mutant in 2008, I guess Activision didn't know exactly what to do with him, so Crash Bandicoot seemingly fell off the face of the earth. That is, until 2017, with the release of the Crash Bandicoot N-Sane Trilogy. Naughty Dog didn't return to work on the remaster, which some people were disappointed about, but instead, development duties were handed off to Vicarious Visions. Nowadays, they're best known for creating the Skylanders series and working on the newest Destiny and Guitar Hero games. Whoopee. But they also made the aforementioned Crash Bandicoot GBA games, as well as Crash Nitro Kart, which I think is a decent follow-up to Crash Team Racing. Knowing that this company would be responsible for updating the PS1 classics, honestly, put me at ease. They've worked with Crash before, and through the interviews I've read, it was clear that everyone on the team were huge Crash fans as well. And the footage I saw made it even more clear that the project was in good hands. I had faith in Vicarious Visions from the very beginning. So, now that I've had nearly a year's worth of experience with the N-Sane Trilogy, did they manage to do Crash Bandicoot justice? Let's get started. First off, this intro is awesome. The original Crash comes in, still just as clumsy as he was in the old days, and jumps into this machine that converts him into an updated 3D model, rendering him in full 4K.
They're puns! They do nothing! Ah!
Right when you start the game, you see how big of a jump in graphics the games are going to take. And even by putting just one character and some stage elements in front of a white background, it still makes a huge difference and leaves a massive impact on you. It's only a few seconds long, but it's a very clever and effective way to prepare you for what's coming next. So, in case you couldn't tell at this point, the Crash Bandicoot N-Sane Trilogy is a collection of remade/remastered versions of the first three Crash Bandicoot games. Before I cover each game individually, I'd like to point out some of the new things that were added to all three. Every single game shares the same physics and controls, and both characters play exactly the same as well. Yes, I said both because you can also play as Crash's sister Coco throughout all three games. Instead of being mostly a weaker version of Crash like she was in Wrath of Cortex, Coco is just as strong and agile as her brother, and I love how they use the time twister from Crash 3 to explain Coco's inclusion in Crash 1 and 2. It's such a nice detail. But aside from the novelty of having her in all 3 games, I think they could have done a little more with her. Maybe if they gave her different attributes from Crash, like a faster running speed or a higher jump, then that would give me more of a reason to experiment with both marsupials and let me decide which levels are best suited for which character. Ultimately though, that doesn't matter to me at all. Why? Well, just look at her. She's like the cutest thing ever. She's taking pictures on her phone and Aku Aku's like, oh god, get a life. And it explodes? Okay, I know everyone's probably made the Samsung Galaxy Note 7 joke already, but all I have to ask is, are her selfies just too much for the phone to handle? Oh, look, now she's doing the crash dance. She's using her laptop to protect her from falling boxes, and even in death she can't get her hands off of it. You know, I've heard that every time Coco laughs, an angel gets its wings. And by that I mean gets a Red Bull thrown at them. The controls in general have been simplified so that, for instance, you can use the triggers to control the vehicles in Crash 3, and spinning and sliding have also been assigned their own buttons. I've heard people complain that the physics were a little too precise, but personally, I love them. They're so much smoother and a lot more responsive than the original games, and for Crash 1 especially, my experience with it is almost made 1,000,000 times better because of this. There are smaller bonuses like the addition of time trials to Crash 1 and 2. I don't really bother with this much though, because these levels clearly weren't meant to be rushed through. At least I can still save my scores under ridiculous names like Dick! Or how about
Death, D-E-D, death.
And my personal favorite, DAG, which, of course, stands for... Where is he? I guess he isn't... Not next time! Every game's soundtrack was given a bit of an overhaul, incorporating the same melodies with a lot of the same sounds, but updated with added instruments and more energy. I absolutely love the work that was done here, and I've added a link to the Spotify playlist in the description for all of you to enjoy. And in perhaps one of the most convenient changes made, you can open up the save menu with the simple press of a button. Hey, look, a PlayStation memory card. Aw, that's cute. Loading screens are also present throughout the whole trilogy, and they're not the most visually interesting in the world, but they do give you some neat hints about what to find or be aware of in each stage. And while I'm already familiar with most of the hints given, I like that they're presented in a way that doesn't make them too vague or too obvious. For example, in the first stage of Crash 2, Turtle Woods, if you avoid breaking all the boxes, you're rewarded with a blue gem. Here's how the remaster clues you in on this. Be kind to the boxes to earn a special gem. That is genius. The cutscenes for each game have also received a staggering update, not only in the quality of the animation, but in terms of personality. Added facial and body movement makes the characters feel more alive, especially in Crash 2 and Crash 3's openings. And look, Tana actually fights off some of Cortex's guards this time. She's still kind of a broad, but that's very welcomed. But what about the voice acting? Well, the cast consists of actors reprising their roles from Crash of the Titans and Mind Over Mutant. So that means we get Jess Harnell as Crash, Debbie Derryberry as Coco, Greg Eagles as Aku Aku, Maurice LaMarche as Embryo, and John DiMaggio as Uka Uka, who's actually kind of hard to point out here.
It's time for Random Trivia!
In Crash Team Racing, Coco was voiced by Hynden Walsh, who also provides the voice of Starfire in Teen Titans and Princess Bubblegum in Adventure Time. Neat. They all recite the original dialogue word for word, so there's no forced ad-libbing or cringeworthy new jokes, and all the actors do a really good job. The only choice of actors that I'm not a big fan of is Lex Lang as Cortex. And yes, I know I probably just made a lot of people angry for saying that, but I'm sorry, I was never a fan of Lex Lang's Cortex. It's just way too buffoonish for me. Now, that has more to do with bad writing and bad directing, because from looking at his line of work, I'm sure he's a very good voice actor. But when it comes to Cortex, nobody can top the greatness of Clancy Brown. Still, if it had to be Lex Lang, and since the voice direction here is far superior to any other Crash game he's been involved in, he at least gives a good performance. I would have preferred if they brought back Clancy Brown instead, but to Lex Lang's credit, his portrayal of Cortex in the N-Sane Trilogy is much closer to what I expect from the character. It's certainly better than...
Come on, follow me, Crash! Stay close and do what I do!
Let's just get to the games. So, here we have the original Crash Bandicoot. Out of all 3 games in the collection, this one definitely got the most improvements. Some camera angles were changed for better depth perception, especially in the Temple Ruin levels. The box tally from Crash 3 was added so that you can see how many boxes are in a stage and how many you've broken. The password system was swapped out in favor of the much-needed save feature, and some new idle animations were added, like this cool volleyball one, or when Crash basically gets obliterated by falling boxes.
Well, the years start coming and they don't stop coming and they don't stop coming and they don't stop coming.
But best of all, you can die, break all the boxes in a stage, and still get the box gem this time. Thank you! That was one of the most annoying aspects of trying to get 100% in the PS1 version, because even dying once would prevent you from getting a stage's gem. Now you don't have to worry about it at all, since you can die as many times as you want and still be rewarded with a gem for breaking all the boxes. However, this only works for the clear gems. If you want to go for the colored gems, then you have to avoid dying at all cost. It doesn't matter if you broke all the boxes, you make one little mistake and you can kiss that colored gem goodbye. I learned that the hard way when I got to the Lost City. It doesn't help that I already still don't like this level, but when I saw this screen during my first playthrough, I need to get a stunt double for this. Granted, it's a good compromise for making normal gems easier to obtain, and while there were parts of the game that I still struggled with this time, I was able to do some other cool stuff that I'd never accomplished in the PS1 version at all. The playthrough I recorded for this video now includes my first time entering a Cortex bonus room and getting a key in Sunset Vista, and I even got a PlayStation trophy for it. That was undoubtedly satisfying. And there's no way I can talk about Crash 1 without bringing up Stormy Ascent. This level was cut from the original game for being way too hard, and really, when you think about it, it's only so hard because Jason and Andy's team didn't consist of entirely good level designers, although this picture of them is still pretty cool. So Vicarious Visions decided to bring it back and released it as DLC. It's hard. Moving on.
Good luck. You're gonna need it.
I hate you!
So, unless you've seen my original Crash Bandicoot video by now, there's not really much else for me to talk about with this version. It's easily the best version of Crash 1 ever made, but it's not without its faults. The boss fights are still nothing special, and some of them are just straight up boring. Oh, you gave Papu Papu 5 hit points instead of 3? That automatically makes it better, right? Wait, did I just die after beating the boss? And Crash, stop shoving the gems up your butt. That's not where they go. You're eating them now? Do you even remember where you last put them? You know what else I find weird? The fact that Coco doesn't have the slide or the body slam. It makes sense for Crash because he didn't have them in the first game, but Coco gets here using the Time Twister from Crash 3, and she could use the slide and body slam there. It doesn't completely ruin the game or anything, but I just don't get how that works within the game's universe. Is it just a side effect of time travel, like in Samurai Jack, where it keeps Jack from aging? But then again, he could still use his sword and do flips and kicks. Oh, what if? Yeah, and Cortex could be Aku, and Crunch could be the Scotsman. Wait, am I still recording? Why am I editing this footage? Am I recording myself right now? What the heck's going on? Okay, before things get confusing, let's move on to Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back. And quickly too, because even Aku Aku's looking like it hurts to think. It's pretty much the same story. Better graphics, better controls, but now we get an uncomfortable amount of focus on Cortex's uvula in the opening cutscene. Because I guess we needed that in our lives. Ooh, that asteroid has a Naughty Dog logo on it. In fact, Vicarious Vision seems to throw in a lot of Naughty Dog references here. Coco's laptop has a Naughty Dog sticker on it. There's a picture of Nathan Drake in Crashing Coco's house. And Coco's watching a cutscene from Uncharted 4. Specifically, the part where Nate and Elena play the original Crash Bandicoot on an original PlayStation. So, the original Crash Bandicoot games exist as a series of games within the Uncharted world, which exists as a series of games within the current Crash Bandicoot world. I never thought I'd have to use this joke again, but...
just go with it.
I should get a button for every joke I make on these videos. No, just kidding, it's just an easy button. Now, Crash 2 was already fine enough on its own, so really what the developers needed to do was refine it and fix everything it had going against it. And if you ask me, compared to the other games on this collection, I'd say it's the closest to being on par with the original, but it still has one very noticeable issue. Thanks to the improved controls, it's not as hard as it used to be, but the original Crash 2 also had exhausting cases of backtracking for the sake of 100% completion, and they're all the same here. And those jetpack stages can just go right ahead and die! I didn't want to start talking about Crash 2 with complaints, but I just wanted to get my only minor gripes with the game out of the way first so that I can praise it for everything else. I had much more fun with this version than the original. Even with how tedious gem collecting can get, the new controls and new physics made it seem much faster and energetic in terms of its pace, and more addicting to play. I got so invested, in fact, that I actually managed to get all the colored gems in this version. I cared that much. Aside from the new controls, graphics, and sound, this version is almost virtually identical to the original, like how it still rewards you for animal cruelty by giving you lives for jumping on Polar.
Oh, somebody please think of the children!
But I did notice some new stuff. You can unlock the Crash Dash after beating Cortex, which makes time trials a little more fun. This crab drags Crash away in the ending cutscene. That's hilarious. And even some of the enemies got a slight redesign, like... Wait a minute. I see what you did there. Red hat, mustache, overalls. I know who that's supposed to be. It's a redneck. And here's something funny that happened to me once. I came into this warp room as Crash, switched control to Coco, and then a projection of Cortex appeared. Normally if I'm playing as Coco, the game would automatically switch control back to Crash, but for this instance, it didn't work. So now we have Cortex talking to Coco and calling her Crash when the real Crash is supposed to be there. I don't know how that happened, and I've never been able to trigger it again, but now I shall leave you with this. We're not done yet, however, because there's one more game to look at. Crash Bandicoot Warped! AKA the best one. Yeah, it's no secret that I friggin' love Crash Bandicoot 3, so this was easily the one I got the most excited to play again. So, now that I have, I can say without a shred of doubt that, honestly, I think the remaster gets the most things wrong out of the whole trilogy. There aren't a ton of instances, but they're very easy to point out. Uka Uka's not particularly threatening in this one. He's not in the shadows as much as he was before, and the way he flies around with that squash and stretch makes him come off as more humorous than menacing. Plus, his spirit form looks like an angry jellyfish. Although I guess that was also the case in the original. Then we have the motorcycle levels and the jet ski levels. The jet ski somehow controls even worse than the original. It doesn't feel as tight as before, and I think they were trying to make it more realistic, like you were actually riding on a jet ski, but you're an anthropomorphic bandicoot wearing overalls. Realism's kinda thrown out the door from the get-go. And man, I forgot how annoying the motorcycle levels were. In other racing games, you don't always have to get first place in order to get farther along, because you can still unlock more tracks by getting at least a passable score. In Crash 3, getting first place is mandatory. You have to win the race in order to get the crystal, You have to win these races in order to progress, and combined with the tricky level design and slippery controls, it can be tiresome after a while. But it's Crash Bandicoot 3, I can't stay mad at it forever. Even with everything that was lost in translation, the game is still so good that the bad stuff just doesn't register, and the new stuff only makes it better. The plane levels now have an aiming reticle, so it makes shooting down bad guys a lot easier, and since Coco is available to play as for all 3 games, she isn't limited to just the jet ski and Purr levels anymore. I'm also able to see the wizard's underwear now, and I very much appreciate that. The boss fights are still the best the series has to offer. The music, originally composed by Josh Mansell, is still great. It still has terrific level design, it still has the Death Tornado spin and the Fruit Bazooka. This revision of Crash 3 might not be perfect, and I wouldn't go so far as to say it's better than the original, but it's still just as fun to play through now as it was back in the day. Aw, poor Frog never stood a chance. The Crash Bandicoot N-Sane Trilogy is a fantastic collection. I bought a PS4 just for this game, and it's made me glad that I did. There are aspects where they don't quite get it right, but that's all just nitpicking. Overall, when it comes down to capturing the essence and the spirit of Crash Bandicoot, Vicarious Visions absolutely nailed it. A lot of passion and dedication clearly went into this, and I would totally be okay with them making any and all future Crash games. But what's next for the Bandicoot as of now? Well, there's plenty of new merchandise coming, so we know that people are still interested in the series. I've seen a lot of fans clamoring for more remasters, with Crash Team Racing and Crash Twinsanity being popular candidates. My personal distaste for the latter aside, I'm not very keen on seeing more remakes. I think the only way Crash Bandicoot can stay relevant is if Activision comes out with new games that progress the series forward, whereas relying on older titles could make Crash come off as a novelty of the past that people will lose interest in after a while because of the lack of fresh ideas being implemented. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't get any remasters at all, unless it's that other game, in which case, no. I'm just saying I would prefer if we got more new Crash games, because I'd love to see what else Vicarious Visions can bring to the series. And for God's sake, Nintendo, please put Crash Bandicoot in the next Smash Brothers. Hashtag Crash for Smash, let's make it happen, people. That's pretty much all I have for this video, but before I sign off, I'm gonna try something that I haven't really done before. In the description, there's a link to a straw poll where you guys can vote on which game you want me to review next. So tell me guys, what do you want to see? A video on this Secret Agent Muppet game for Game Boy Advance, or that one new game from that one series I said I would never talk about? Click the link below to cast your vote, and don't put your choice in the comments section because I won't count it as a vote. The straw poll ends a week from today, so have at it guys. In the meantime... Hey. The heck?
Hey, you! Listen up! You! Yeah, you!
Crash Bandicoot? How did you get in my house?
You're beautiful! I love you, man! I love you, man! And you know what? I love you!
Thanks, but that doesn't really answer my question.
And again, 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 and done. Then I come out, and I'm doing the victory dance. I'm like,
come on, man, that's not how you do the victory dance. This is how you do the victory dance. Did I just hallucinate all that?